Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the technical session of the National Conference on Making Higher Education Accessible and Available 2022. Session 1 will focus on the theme, Creating Opportunities for Students to Pursue Their Passion and Being Entrepreneurs. The goal of this session is to explore newer vistas of knowledge and skills in higher education and to bring out the true potential of every student through a values-based approach. For this session, we have with us on stage Professor C.B. Sharma, Professor of Education, Shri Adhi Narayan, founder of Anadi Foundation, and representing the Sri Sathya Sai University for Human Excellence, we have Dr. Shrikanta Murthy, Vice Chancellor, and Dr. Venugopal, Registrar, Evaluation. The session 1 will have 3 speakers. First, we have Dr. Chandra B. Sharma, Professor of Education at the School of Education, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. He served as the chairman of National Institute of Open Schooling and director of the Distance Education Program of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, MHRD and IGNOW project. With 3 decades of teaching experience, he is the recipient of the President's Award for commendable contribution to digital initiatives. He will be speaking on the topic, the importance of providing access to necessary skill set in higher education. Over to Dr. Chandra ji. Yes.
Namaskar. When we teach in a class, we ensure you are all awake. तो जब हम नमस्कार करें तो आप भी जोर से नमस्कार करिए. नमस्कार. Great. At the outset, I must congratulate the Sathya Sai University for Human Excellence for organizing this very great event and inviting me, giving me this opportunity to share my views with you. Although since the first session or the inaugural session, most of the participants from the front rows have disappeared, my hopes lie on the student benches, the youngsters. The conference has been organized on making higher education accessible and equitable for everyone. We had a great event yesterday. I will be saying a few things about higher education and reacting on what higher education means. Then what the topic for this session has been, creating opportunities for students to pursue their passion and being entrepreneurs. What was the event yesterday? I will stick to English because I can see some people who may not understand Hindi. I am so inclined to speak always in English and Hindi both, but what was the event yesterday? It's important to look at the structure of the event. The session started by asking the founder, normally it is the chancellor, can we start the event? And the chancellor says, yes, I permit. And it's practiced globally now, which has come from the Sikshavalli, the Taittiriya Upanishad. And what is that? Dikshant, or the convocation, is an age-old traditional system of Indian academia, where the teacher said to the student, I hold you worthy of the certificate you hold today. Go into the world, practice it, and you can say you are the student of such and such. You are a Paniniya. Go and tell the world you have sat at the foot of Panini and he has authorized you to practice what I have taught you in the world. That is what a convocation is. The teacher permits the child, permits the student to go and practice, because now the teacher understands that this student is ready to go and serve the society. There are two things to it. One is what Param Pujya, we normally address the Sarsang Chalakji as Param Pujya Sarsang Chalakji. What the Param Pujya said, it's not only for you. You are educated, you get a degree, that's not enough. Do you really serve the society? Do you take care of your neighbor? Only then you are educated. So if you are degreed, you hold a degree, it means nothing if people in the society don't accept you as learned who serves the society. I was very happy to see that time and again yesterday it was mentioned that the Satya Sai University of Human Excellence will focus on creating excellent human beings. We have an example, and there are several examples, I'll quote one. A student by the name Satyakam goes to his guru and says, please accept me as your student. The guru says, who are you? Are you a Brahmin? In India, we tell the most learned as the Brahmins, which has now been converted into a caste. But those who are learned, and the definition of learning will have to be understood. He said, I don't know. My mother never told me. So the guru said, go and ask your mother and come back. If you are a Brahmin, I accept only Brahmins as my students. So he went and asked his mother. The teacher wants to know whether I am a Brahmin. So he said, go back and tell your guru that you are son of Javala. My name is Javala. Go and tell your guru, you are son of Javala. Your name is Javala Satyakam. Tell him, my mother told me, she is a Sevika who served many men. She knows who is your father, but she won't disclose you. You can only disclose that you are Javala's son. He went back and told his guru, and his guru said, this honesty can come only from a Brahmin, so I accept you as my student. We need to go back and understand who is a learned person, who has the courage, who has the strength to say the truth, to stand up for truth and fight for truth. And similar is the tradition of the modern universities. We have a history of about 1,000 years of modern universities, which starts from the University of Bologna. The church and the state was always in conflict. The church wanted to be powerful, the king wanted to be powerful, so the king had army, the king had finance, the church had devotees. So the church would employ the learned, who we can call as the professors, and tell them, go into the society and spread the message of Bible. And they employed the best minds. So, in course of time, many such scholars started debating, analyzing the message of Bible. Read Abelard. So Abelard started discussing, analyzing what is said in Bible and whether that is right or wrong. So the church said, no, you're not allowed to analyze Bible. It's sacrosanct. You only have to spread the message. The teacher said, Abelard said, no. If my student or students ask me questions, I will have to answer and analyze. The church said no. So Abelard said, thank you very much. I'll have my own institution. He crossed the Seine and established the institution which ultimately became the University of Bologna. That is the tradition of universities. So just saying University of Human Values will be established or will work on it is not enough. A university stands for humanism, for tolerance, for the search of reason. I'm quoting Jawaharlal Nehru, his first convocation speech after independence at the University of Allahabad. A university has to be humanist. A university has to toy with ideas. If you are not toying with ideas, you are not experimenting with ideas, you are not doing innovation, you are not a university. You cannot walk the trodden path. A university cannot afford to walk the trodden path, to only disseminate what is there in books. It won't be a university. The idea of a university is nothing new. It has to be a place where great minds debate ideas. I'm saying, and I started by saying all this, because I believe this is a very, very new university and it's going to establish its traditions. Universities stand by their traditions. Why do we have all these caps or dress for convocation? And every university has its own system of it, and that goes on for decades. Did you see that the procession yesterday had two boys carrying two instruments? Kyun? Why? Why was that gada? Hanuman carries that gada. Does it symbolize anything? Or it's just a routine matter? No. It has great meaning behind it. Find it. Look at convocation addresses and convocation processions of various universities and you will understand. I'm saying this because time and again we have talked about the teacher. Look at the debates since yesterday. All the speakers who spoke, even Sadguru spoke this morning. The Chancellor Murthy Sahab spoke about teacher. What is a university? And when you are talking about entrepreneurship and pursuing passion in a university, skilling in a university, what should be the roadmap? We have recently given to ourselves, this nation, the National Education Policy 2020. I had the great privilege of being an integral part of it, 2015-2020. I was, as it was mentioned, chairman of the National Institute of Open Schooling, the largest institute of the world with 3 million students, 30 lakh students across the country and abroad. We had the same tradition. Physics, chemistry, mathematics or biology. And the students had to study these, write exam, get certified. 3 years back, I had come here. I don't know how many of you were there. And I had said this, I will repeat this story again. A Guruji came from Patanjali and he wanted to meet me. So when he met me, I said, how come you are here, Acharyaji? Because you are in the business of disseminating Vedic knowledge. So he said, we teach Vedas, our students are Vedagya, but they get degree from your institution. They write exams for 12th and they get the certificate so that they can qualify for jobs. I said, what do they study? He said, they study normal subjects from the Vedas, the grammar, the semantics, Vedadhyan, Sanskrit. I said, but why should they not be certified on that? He said, no, it's not recognized. So they have to write your papers, which are painting, data entry operation, and they pass 12th from an iOS. I said, it's a shame. I'm sure you will know that school education, in school education, state boards are supreme in the state. And then we have 2 national boards, the CBSE and the NIOS. And I keep thanking Mahadev for it. He gave me this opportunity to be chair of National Institute of Open Schooling. NIOS is the only board which has the autonomy to decide on its courses as well. So I said, we will have Ved subjects as our subjects. I called my academic council. This is the only school board of the country which has an academic council. And I got all the subjects in consultation with Belur Mutt, Sandeepni, and Patanjali, and said these will also be subjects for 10th and 12th. Since 2018, students have been writing their exam in Bharatiya Gyan Parampara and getting certified for 10th and 12th. I come from higher education, so I understand the meaning of autonomy. And I exercise my autonomy to decide on these subjects. I must quietly say, and please don't advertise, I said, we will not have any functions, no launching sessions, nothing, no minister. Because once you do that, you have a big problem. So we developed the courses, we announced that, we admitted students, we run those courses, and we certified the students. I think there must be about a few lakh students who are 10th and 12th pass in Bharatiya Gyan Parampara. Why can that not be part of all academic institutions? Why should Sathya Sai University of Human Excellence come up with entirely new concept of a subject and teach? This is a message for the university. I believe the takeaway for this session should be we must explore new areas which are required not only for our society, our nation, but for the world. Because the motto of Bharatiya education has been Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktaye. That knowledge is absolutely of no use if you do not care for your neighbor or for somebody sitting thousands of miles away in Africa or America or Europe who is suffering and you can't care for that person. An educated person should be sensitive enough to think about the neighbor. I met a visitor from US, and he said, I'm trying to understand the RSS. I told him I am a Swayam Sevak, but I don't have a membership, I don't have a certificate. There is nothing like that in RSS. RSS says only one thing, and that is, if you can think for your neighbor, if you can think for your country, if you can think for humanity, you are an RSS person. If you can think for the humanity, you are a graduate. If you can't think for people suffering in Africa, America, or Europe, you are not a graduate. That brings me to the issue of the session. Higher education is not about the rudimentaries. This is not about teaching alphabets. This is not about teaching the basics of a discipline. That's the job of a school. It's about prophesizing about any area of human knowledge. India had a tradition of Chausat Kala. Most of these areas of knowledge have died because of the 1,000 years of invaders, foreigners, who crippled the system of education. Vidya Parampara, we don't call it education. Siksha nahi kehte hain, isko Vidya kehte hain. The process of creating human beings. That has to be in the schools, first 12 years. Only those who can qualify that that 12 years of education, go for higher education. We must make that distinction. So what would be, I've heard ministers speak from various platforms. We will have a professor of carpentry. We will also have a professor of shoemaking. Don't trivialize the definition of acharya or a professor. It has very special significance. So when we say skill, the basic of skilling will have to be done in school. But the theory making, the advanced knowledge, new knowledge creation will be in the higher education, and I believe that should be one of our goals. We can take up all 64 areas, but let us not trivialize every discipline by saying, हम कुर्सी बनाना सिखाएंगे यूनिवर्सिटी के डिग्री में. That cannot be the curriculum, the syllabus of a course on carpentry in higher education. We have opened, through the national education policy, the possibility of learning any discipline, including sports. A child of 6 years gets interested in any sport, he or she would be practicing. Perhaps after 12 years of schooling would be a certificate holder in cricket, in sports. But that doesn't mean we can call him a graduate. I'm emphasizing on this because we are at a very crucial juncture in India. We have just come up with our national education policy. We are in the process of designing, developing many documents. I am part of the National Curriculum Framework Committee, which is doing that. We have just submitted our reports, 25 focus groups. I'm on the alternative schooling group. That has to be school education, not higher education. Similarly, when we talk of a teacher of 3-year-old and a teacher for PhD will not be the same. Will not be the same. We have said we'll have 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. That first 5 years, what we have called as foundation, will be very crucial. And I would only like to reiterate what our Prime Minister said on 7th August 2020 when he dedicated this policy to teachers through his address, and he said, these are most important years of education. The teacher may be very important because he or she will lay the foundation of a child, but that doesn't mean call him or her acharya or a professor. The pay scales may be similar, but the jobs would be different. Even, I think Sai also mentioned about teachers. Teachers are the backbone. And in the Indian tradition, which can definitely claim to have given the world the best books filled with knowledge, the Vedas, had teachers center stage. When the king was in, or any king, any time was in any doubt, will call the Raj Purohit and ask, "Aap hame margdarshan dein, please show me light." This was the tradition, and look at countries across the globe which today boast of best economies, best governed countries. You have the academia, the teachers center stage, they are heard. We must also do that. This is not because I am a teacher. This is because we have a tradition and which testifies systems, organizations, institutions which have learned as torchbearers, excel and are able to deliver. We are trying to change. We are trying to change in India. Read the National Education Policy 2020. It's a small document, but we have devoted 2 chapters on teachers, the chapter 5 and 15. And we have also mentioned in the policy where we faltered. Read 15.2. In 1995, we created a National Council for Teacher Education. We wanted good breed of teachers and well-trained teachers. The policy itself says in 15.2, out of 18,000 teacher education institutions in the country, 10,000 colleges award degrees for money. They have absolutely no education. A nation with more than half its teacher education institutions selling degrees can never expect to be a nation which will compete with the world. That has to change. I think you will understand that teachers are trained in higher education, but they serve the schools. So there has to be a relationship between the two. There's very little relationship today. No university professor visits a school. No education department of education works with a school. What we have said is that in times to come, every PhD student, whether one is working on nanotechnology or physics or whatever, will have to go and work in a school for some time. There has to be a relationship, symbiotic relationship between the two. So what will it impact upon? The Department of Higher Education, which works on new areas of skill, will impart or direct or work in collaboration with the schools to develop those competencies in children right from the age of 3. We start our skill courses very late in school. And it's not somehow, it is because of the Macaulay's policy on education, who strongly said, through education, we'll create a class of people who would be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. The whole objective of education was, I don't know whether I should say change or distorted. And finally, Macaulay also said, they will help us prolong the British rule in India. Can that be an objective of any education policy? We have continued with the same since 47. We must change it. I am reminded of the maiden speech of our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, in the Parliament on 11th June 2014. Read Policy 18, 1986. What did we say? We said we'll emphasize on computers. We'll promote computer education. The implication is that most of the American companies have Indians, not only as major staff, but also as heads. How did it do good to the Indian masses, the taxpayers, the village people, the less privileged, what this university intends to serve? The Prime Minister said on 11th June 2014 on the floor of the Parliament, the focus of our education would be the village child. He was speaking in Hindi. I'll have to speak in Hindi there so that it's well understood. 75% आबादी गांव में रहती है. उनके पास अच्छे स्कूल नहीं हैं. उनके पास अच्छे शिक्षक नहीं हैं. क्या हम उन बच्चों को तकनीक के माध्यम से अच्छी शिक्षा पहुंचा सकते हैं? This is not only in the interest of those village children. It's in the global interest. If India is 20% of the world population and 70% of its population lives in villages, we need to convert that into productive population, and that was actual situation in India when we had 27% stake in global trade year 1700. If we again want to become Sone ki Chidiya, we will have to go back to our roots, the villages who have, because of our policies, become less privileged. वो less privileged नहीं है. लेकिन उनको हमने लेस प्रिविलेज बना दिया, क्योंकि ना उनको हमने शिक्षा दी, ना विद्यालय पहुंचाया, ना टीचर पहुंचाए, तो वो कैसे कंट्रीब्यूट करेंगे? I think through this session we would like to examine and come up with recommendations that the university must work on skilling, because every hand must contribute to the national development through one's own self contribution. Let's not ask for jobs. Every person should become productive because of the school and the university education. Time again it is emphasized. Time and again it is emphasized that only 26-27% of the relevant age group is in higher education. Higher education is elitist. It's not for everyone. 100% population will go to higher education is never to be aspired for. Those who after 18 years intend to divert to various areas, sports, agriculture and other areas, will go out, work in those areas, contribute, do self-development, but the creation of new knowledge, constant research to refine areas of knowledge must be done in universities. That should be aspired, and what the policy says, we will definitely like to take it up to 50% of the relevant age group. The objective should be to find out what areas of skilling need to be taken up in higher education, universities, through which we create new knowledge in various areas, even dance, carpentry, music. We have sporadic institution for music, for dance. Why? If we are 20% of the population, global population, and there are millions of, I'll tell you, when we were working on the national education policy, I was looking after the non-formal education and vocational education. I was spearheading the national team. I was traveling across the country and I went to Ranchi DPS, Swamiji. And I asked the boys and girls, what do you want to change? If you had the authority, what would you change in the national curriculum? A girl got up and said, Ki, sir, agar mera mauka hota, if I had the opportunity, I would have just learned dancing. It's my passion. So I would have just done that, learned various forms of dance, read about them, learned them. So I asked the principal, Dr. Ram Singh. I mentioned this on many platforms, and I mentioned the name of the principal to make you believe it's a real story. I asked Dr. Ram Singh, who is this girl? And he said, sir, she is the only daughter, only child of the leading surgeons. Husband and wife both are leading surgeons of Ranchi. They have a large nursing home. They want their daughter to be doctor. The girl is interested in becoming a dancer. But she will have to become a doctor even if she has to go for a donation college, because she has to take charge of the nursing home. Why? From there I went to Guwahati to meet children, and I went to a government school, obviously lower middle class students, and I asked the same question. A girl gave me identical answer. So I asked the teacher who was coordinating my visit, and she said during the lunchtime, sir, I'm a professional dancer I give public performances. That's my passion. I teach chemistry at the school because that gives me my salary. What a shame. Why can our people, girls and boys, not pursue their passion? And if we became Sone Ki Chidiya, it was because every individual was able to pursue one's passion and contribute to knowledge, to society, and to the globe. Through one's own will, happiness. I will definitely recommend that let us not just pursue skilling at higher education. We need to look at the education sector in a continuum right from 3 years to 21, 22. what a 3-year-old requires to become an entrepreneur, what a 18-year would like to do when one enters the university to develop entrepreneurship and various skills. Let's not trivialize skilling by saying that universities would follow skilling and come up with something which is not globally accepted as contribution of higher education. I know I had to touch on various aspects. I definitely wanted to respond on what is the idea of a university. What universities stand for, it is nothing new. Let us not try to redefine the definition of a university. University stands for certain things. It has been already decided. Let's work on that. At the same time, let us go back to our roots, which we have somehow forgotten. There's a very nice book, The Beautiful Tree by Dharampal. Read that book. We had a great tradition. Every child was in school. We had 95% literacy. It was only because of the Macaulay's policy in India that we receded to about 7% of literacy in India. If we go back to our roots, perhaps we would be able to achieve 100% literacy again. And we have been emphasizing again and again. Look at every speaker who would say, we have to bring up girls, we have to do this for girls. Girls and boys walked hand in hand in this country. We have had many Vedic institutions headed by women 4,000 years back as headed by men. महिला वेद विद्यालय उतने ही थे जितने पुरुष थे. किसी भी क्षेत्र में ज्ञान के महिलाएं पीछे नहीं थी. Let us not go by that cliche that the world says we have to bring up women. No, our women always walked hand in hand with us, and we should only aspire to get back to that. And that can happen only if we go back to our roots. I'm not pleading go back to only the knowledge corpus that we had. Knowledge corpus expands, and it has expanded. So let us look at the systems that we had, which cultivated all areas of skills, knowledge, and combine it with the modern knowledge and aspire to make a new India at the Swarnim Mahotsav of 2047. We are going to celebrate 100 years of independence in 25 years. We have started working on it. How India can once again be Sone Ki Chidiya in 2047, which will not only be for India alone. If we say we want to work to make a different India, it will definitely not only for India alone, because we'll always go back to what we always believed, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. हमें अपनी शिक्षा को ठीक करना है, इसलिए नहीं कि हम अपने लिए कुछ लाएं, हम अपने राज्य के लिए, देश के लिए लाएं, क्योंकि हमको दुनिया की चिंता है. I'll end by saying, when India awakes, the world benefits. When we had pandemic and India produced the antidote for pandemic, we were the first country to export, in spite of the fact we had so many cases. ये इसीलिए क्योंकि हम दुनिया के लिए अपने को देखते हैं और दुनिया के लिए अपने को जीते हैं. भारत के उत्थान में दुनिया का उत्थान है. हमें विश्वविद्यालयों में और खास करके सत्य साई यूनिवर्सिटी जैसे इंस्टीट्यूशन में ये सोच के काम करना चाहिए कि हम किन चीज़ों को बदलें कि हमारी आबादी बदले, हम जो 20% है दुनिया की वो बदले, ताकि दुनिया को फ़ायदा पहुंच सके. बहुत बहुत आभार, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि आपने ये मौका दिया. शायद कुछ चीज़ें कनेक्टेड हैं, कुछ डिसकनेक्टेड हैं, लेकिन आपको पूरे चीज़ को एक समग्र में देखना होगा ताकि आप समझ सकें कि स्किलिंग में किसी विश्वविद्यालय को क्या करना चाहिए और सत्य साई यूनिवर्सिटी के लिए क्या मैसेज हो सकता है. बहुत बहुत आभार, धन्यवाद, नमस्कार, ओम.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma ji. Our next speaker is Sri Adhi Narayan. He is the founder of Anadi Foundation, located in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu. It is spread out in a 9-acre stretch of land as the Center for Spiritual Evolution and Intense Learning. It is a socio-spiritual organization dedicated to unfolding the spiritual self of individuals. The programs offered by Anadi Foundation are aimed at inspiring young people to lead a self-reliant, sustainable, and fulfilled life. After a deep spiritual experience during his graduate studies in the US, Sri Adhi Narayan had a strong desire to return to India to dedicate himself to spirituality and serving the society. Since his marriage, Sri Adhi Narayan and his wife Srimati Smriti have been leading a yogic life in simplicity and a life of purpose. He will be speaking on the topic Following Your Passion and Forging Your Own Path. Sri Adhi Narayan ji.
Sai Ram, Namaste. Very happy to be here, and especially amongst students. Students have always been my passion. And hence, predominantly, I will orient this, what can I say, samvada, conversation, with the students in mind. When we say passion, many advise that one should follow one's heart. But then when I meet various students, when I ask them what's in your heart, many respond, I want to eat out here, I want to go to this movie, I want to go to Switzerland. So it's, in one sense, so food or travel or some form of entertainment, which is entertaining to them. This could be, this could be students in schools or colleges. Something that is interesting, engaging, provides strong stimuli to the, you can say, the central nervous system. High-end intellectual knowledge, for many students, it might seem like, there is a word in Tamil which I'm going to use. Maybe it's not in Tamil. I learned it from my eldest son when he was very young. He was in his first standard playing with his friends. And I found this word constantly being repeated. It's called mokka. Have you heard the term mokka? I don't know the equivalent in Kannada. Okay. It roughly translates into something called boredom. This is boring. Anything you touch, it's boring. This is boring. That is boring. And definitely, in classroom, studies could be very boring, monotonous. The opposite of this term, mokka, in Tamil again, was hardly ever used. In student parlance, it is like sakka. Sakka means super. This is super, this is exciting. Wow, I like to study. I want this knowledge. I wish to progress in life. I want to follow my passion. that I hardly ever heard. I'm sure here it should be a little different, but I'm just generalizing. And I'm sure you're all with me when you interact with your friends outside. You clearly see there is this dichotomy between what is interesting and what is not so interesting, so engaging. And especially in the modern terms, we have all gotten used to gadgets. Many come to me and say, how do I get rid of this addiction? I'm constantly addicted to my gadgets. In the top-notch, say, computer scientists, many people engage in research oriented towards gaming. How to build better games that are more engaging, more fun, and that will make you more hooked on or addicted to it. And that is a source of constant stimulation. So much stimulation that a regular classroom or a university level education seems bland. Bland means in the uppu chappu illama, no masala. So we want edutainment. It should be entertaining education. But how to match games? You play with mobile phones. That's a lot of stimulus or stimuli to the nervous system. Entertainment seems to provide it. But that is at the basic level. And that is very short-lived. Even if you are passionate about gaming, the satisfaction that you derive out of it, you play something very engaging. How long does it fulfill you? Very short period of time. It does not fulfill you for more than that. And hence, there's a large segment of students who say that, what do you wish to do in life? I wish to earn well, settle down well. I wish to earn well, make a lot of money, get a good job, have good status and prestige in society, which is definitely much better than just engaging yourselves in very temporary, affairs. But that also, if we see here, you're being taught values through every aspect of your stay here. And that might not fit into just a regular job aspiration, just getting ready for the industry, which will provide a good job, a good status, a standing in society. That might not fit into that window. Then what's the use of values? Some professional values would do. What's the requirement for human values? What's the requirement for human excellence? There is no concept of excellence there if the aspiration is only that much. So one category of aspiration is removal of boredom through engaging in entertainment. Another category of aspiration is getting a job, what is called a good life. But definitely, that is not the only focus or the main focus here. And hence, we look at deeper aspirations that lead to human excellence. That is the concept of dharma. So here we are not discussing anything new. It is the framework of purushartha. What is the purpose for which I am here? Each needs to define it appropriately. Dharma, artha, moksha, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Kama is pleasure, that which gives me pleasure. Entertainment might give pleasure. But is that all? Artha is wealth. What's in it for me? That's a very important question that most people have. But that is artha, objective wealth. But that's where the concept of dharma is that factor that leads to excellence. Why would one choose to excel in one's pursuit of knowledge or anything? Why would one be passionate about it? Why would one have the constant energy no matter what the challenges one faces? When would one have it? And that's where, let me tell an anecdote from my life. With a series of anecdotes, let me illustrate this principle. Where following your passion, forging your own path. What does that mean to each individual present here? Actually, we are all on a unique journey that is called prarabdha. It's a very, very interesting term which is worthwhile investigating on. At a certain time, I had spent more than 200 days in Mauna Tapasya, silent, intense meditation. My definition of it was for Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha means, how do I serve the world better? And through my own path, I felt silent, intense meditation. Mauna Tapasya will give me clarity and the necessary strength to be able to serve the world better. Like that, each person defines their path. Now, is it automatic? It is not automatic. What's the purpose of my life? Is it commercial off the shelf? It's called commercial off the shelf means, how many kilos of passion does it cost? 1 kilo of passion, how many rupees does it cost? It does not translate like that. Yeah, I need 1 kilo of passion. Can you give me for 100 rupees? Or will it cost 200 rupees? This reasoning does not work. Similarly, when we expect that passion to arise without our participation, how will it sustain? And that's where forging your own path, your own unique life path, becomes so very interesting. And especially when you have a life ahead of you. You look forward to a life ahead of you. So I was in engineering, and along with my, a close friend, we used to constantly discuss how to be multimillionaires. Okay, multimillionaires means, having more than $1 million in the bank account. And for that, at that time, we felt that the easiest way is to go to US. And the easiest way to go to the US is to, you crack the GRE, you go for a MS, a master's, and then get started maybe in the Bay Area, California, so on. That seemed like the straight path. Now, Bharat is the destination. It has always been, but just that at that point in time, I had no one to inform me better that being in Bharat is the best thing that can happen. I did not have that reasoning, thanks to, as Professor beautifully mentioned, the Macaulayan education that we are all subject to. That I understood much later. At that time, I did not have that foresight. So obviously, with that education, the highest aspiration that I could aspire for is to be like a Bill Gates or you name it. That is the highest aspiration that in a regular Indian educational setup, someone aspires for. In the Indian educational setup, one could aspire to be a Swami Vivekananda. That nobody taught us. In the regular math, physics, chemistry, biology, all the aspiration that is being built up is to succeed. And what does success mean? A lot of money. What would I use that money for? Nobody defines it. Nobody even shows a path. And that's where being in such an institution makes all the difference. Because there are people who are exceptionally successful here, who have left everything and come for seva. You see such living idols. Not in every institution do you get to see such idols. For example, there are pracharaks in the RSS. you get to see them, you would be inspired. That's how Bharata has sustained for such a long time. Dharma has flourished in this land for such a long time. It is through living idols who live their ideals. These are literal idols. You can worship them. And worshipping is not wrong. What you worship, if you worship a movie star, that's a losing game. Many people, let me share a hilarious anecdote here. Once I was interacting with a student who had a big poster of, favorite Tamil movie star in his hostel room. On being asked, hey, are you such a big bhakt of this movie star? He responded, no, daily I wake up to see him. That if this guy can rise to the top, I can do much better. In Tamil, it is like, ivane indala valarlanna, nala ivanoda evlo mel. So there can be different kinds of inspiration. One is inspiration that is like you look down upon someone and think yourselves high. But thankfully in Bharata Desha, even now, you have living idols who live their ideal. That's why Mahatmas say, my life is my message. They live the principles that they share. And that is highly inspiring. Now, just being a multimillionaire is not living by principles. There need not be an iota of dharma, loka sangraha, loka kshema, love and service to everybody. Need not be there. So, I and my roommate decided to be multimillionaires. Okay. And we reached US. We were on a fast trajectory. We were all passionate, full of energy. I completed my master's in 3 semesters. And it so happened that I was left physically alone for the first time in my life. In Bharat, you don't get to be alone so much. At least your parents don't leave you alone. There is always someone hanging around you. So I was left physically alone for the first time in my life. 3 days, my roommates went out. And there, I had a very simple experience. There was a deep relaxation that pervaded me. When my roommates returned back, in their own terms, they could not identify the person sitting there. Because generally, we identify each other with the superficial personality, the outward personality. When that gets relaxed, something amazing happens. So later, people were asking me what happened, and I did not have a clue. I could not logically explain it. Because my education had not given me the words to be able to logically explain the experience that I was having. So that's when I started studying Indian philosophy, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, like that. And I clearly understood this was a wonderful experience that has happened. And I matched, the closest match was the experience of Samadhi, or Atma Sakshatkara, Atma Darshana. So these terminologies were new to me because of the lack of educational content, educational exposure. Then over a period of time, digging deeper, I came across many such aspects which could actually propel humanity forward. So many of the problems facing humanity could actually be solved by mining our own traditional wisdom and combining it with the modern sciences and taking it forward. And that requires an aspiration because it is born out of one's own desire. Your life is your desire. What you shape of it is your desire. How you shape it. What direction do you wish to give it? That is in your hands. And for that, supportive environment becomes very important. That gives you the tools, the frameworks to be able to understand and take the things forward. And later, I and my wife entered university as teachers, as professors, and through interaction with tens of thousands of students, we used to have an open door policy where students would walk in home from morning 4:30 to night 12 for their own things. Some would come for music, dance, drama. Some would come for Linux hacking. I was also a Linux hacker. Now I'm a life hacker. Now hacking is improving. Just as you improve software, you improve lives. And that is through participation. And for participation, you need that Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. You need your desire. You also need knowledge. And that knowledge we gain through modern education as well, but through our ancient wisdom as well, combining it. And that's where, over a period of interaction with many students, many researchers, we started understanding that the depth of experience that we have individually and as humanity. For example, individually, when we look at the terminologies, let's say in yoga, with my modern education, I could juxtapose it in the form of yogic neuroscience. So neuroscience approaches in terms of signals, measuring nervous signals. But one can have experience in the form of yoga. Yoga means samadhi. That's how it's yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. So these are all experiential or first person. So can we not combine first person methodologies with third person methodologies? Ayur genomics or Ayur bioinformatics or machine learning and AI used for mining our immense wealth of Vedic knowledge. All these are possibilities and much more. So there are so many ways to serve this world. Through jnana, we can serve. Through seva, we serve. Through grassroots level movements, we serve. Whatever interests one takes concrete steps in that direction. So the idea might seem big. The ideas that are being discussed in this conference might seem far, because many of us here might be discussing with some background of experience. But that's where, as students, it starts with a step. Wherever you are, it does not matter. There is a beautiful theory of complexity, complexity theory that deals with nonlinearity, emergent properties, and so on. So it's not linear. As you start taking steps in any direction, then you will start seeing that things start emerging along the lines of your passion. And that way forging a path ahead. Not just for yourself, but for so many more that actually get inspired by you. Now this is actually a very, very simple idea. And to follow up, the very simple thing you're already doing. That's the bhava of seva. Hold on to that bhava. There is so much power in intention. The practical details definitely follow. That way, being in such an ecosystem, under an enlightened master, is not a very easy thing to gain. In fact, in the Indian tradition, it's clearly recognized that each of our birth is unique and not random. A very short period of time we spend in this bhuloka. The birth, death, and it's a very short span if you look at it. Before we know, you're off. Now, how can this be a random phenomenon, where each one of us is so unique? And that too, of all the places, there are just recently NASA released, James Webb, a point in space reveals so many galaxies. And as per modern astronomy, there are trillions of galaxies. And in that, we are in Milky Way galaxy, and that has billions of stars. In that, we are in the solar system and on Earth. And out of everywhere, you are here. How can that be random? It's called adrishya. That means it's not yet visible. That's where when we ask these bigger questions, how can we serve others? How can we serve humanity? What is all this? Those generate the passion, the relentless passion, the drive that actually forge our path. One might not know what's ahead, and that does not matter. This intention, this passion, this bhava becomes all important. And that is abundantly available here. You can see it functioning in and through all the activities. So that way, it's a wonderful thing that all of us are here. Let me end with an invocation. Om Loka Samasta Skino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Skino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Skino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Sri Adhi Narayan ji. Your talk was truly, truly delightful to hear. Our third speaker for this session is Mr. Shiv Kumar, the co-founder of the Catalyst Group. Due to a last-minute emergency, he could not join us in person. However, he has very kindly sent us a video recording. Mr. Shiv Kumar is the chief integrator of the COVID Action Collab. As a social investor who is passionate about solving complex social problems and improving the health and wealth of vulnerable communities, Shiv has dedicated 30 years working on social development in India and internationally. His experience spans consulting, strategy, advisory, technical support, institution building, mentoring, leading teams, being a facilitator, and coaching across a spectrum of focus areas such as health, livelihoods, education, sustainability, and gender equity, among others. He will be speaking on the topic, Amalgamating Enterprise with Social Service, a values-based approach. Can we have the video, please?
Crore worth of products every year, and this brand was created so that the consumers get the best quality milk products. And at the same time, on the other side, the people who produce it, small farmers, people with 1 or 2 cattle, they getting the best price and all the services at their village level was his dream. And he built this mammoth enterprise, not in one state, but all states of India, set up cooperatives and federations, and eventually a national brand, which was able to turn a problem, which is about milk deficit, and in fact, huge import deficits there, to actually a country which is exporting milk. And while doing that, it is not a company became richer because of that, like a Nestle or a HUL. Here, farmers became rich. If you were to ever travel in Gujarat in a district called Kheda, you will find the wealth which has been generated for the farmers visibly available everywhere. And that has been possible only because of the milk revolution, the way it was set up. And I come from that college and background, and I'm very happy to talk to you students today because this opportunity exists in practically every field. And I'm going to lay out some possibilities on how you can create social value through enterprises. Today as a student, as you graduate and move forward from this institute, where spiritual journey and looking beyond yourself has been embedded into your learnings, I think it is very important to look at how is your enterprise creating social value and social good, not negative public good, right? How do you do that in a way that it is not just self-sacrifice and no income for you, but at the same time you are able to generate income and share that value with everybody and also retain some for yourself. So a typical enterprise is unifocal in terms of whether it is selling let's say a laptop or a phone or a tablet or a carpet. Essentially looks at, can I create value for a customer? And that value is in terms of a price and a quality of a product and the usability of it, right? Now that value essentially generated to the customer is returned back to you in terms of turnover and your profits. Now while doing this, there is nothing wrong in commerce or economy, don't get me wrong. While doing that, usually the result is measured in terms of turnover and profits, right? The difference between a classical enterprise selling carpets or collecting waste and managing it vis-a-vis a social enterprise is very, very simple. In a social enterprise, creating social value is the first result that you look for. However, you also ensure that it is economically viable to do that. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples which will help you understand this. I'll begin with one which is called the noble plastic, which essentially solves a huge problem. Many of you may have visited shops in which there are hangers which are in which clothes are hanging, Marks and Spencer being a classic example. When you visit these shops and if you buy a cloth, there is a hanger there which is removed from the clothes when you buy it and given to you in a bag. The hanger is just thrown away. You would have noticed it's black in color. In fact, it is the lowest quality grade of plastic which has been already recycled many times. We call it the dead end plastic. It can go nowhere but to landfills and into the waterways and eventually into the oceans, spoiling both our drinking water as well as the oceans. Now what we came up with as a solution is to collect these hangers, clean them and see if they can be repurposed, which means can they be reused, and we found 50% could be. And we hired women from very low economic conditions within what we would call as slums in urban areas, NGOs who work with them, and these women would sort, clean, repack these hangers and redistribute it back to Marks and Spencer factories, which were then reused. So we started by saving 50% of the hangers being repurposed, and eventually with some amount of training and storage betterment, we were able to now increase it to 80% of all the hangers being repurposed. Now what does it mean for Marks and Spencer? They actually saved money in terms of 1 to 2 crores a year in terms of buying hangers. Secondly, from a perspective of job creation, we have created jobs for 50 women who earn a decent living and they work in their own neighboring areas and they're able to repurpose the hangers. And for the planet, we have saved around 430 tons of plastic in 2 years. So it's a win-win-win which has been created. So today's social enterprises are all about creating this kind of value where we don't even look at one impact but actually multiple impacts on the planet, on the people and the prosperity. So this is just one example what a social enterprise can do in terms of creating both social value and economic value. The World Economic Forum recently released a report called the Social Economy. So what does social economy mean vis-a-vis just an economy, right? Social economy is really opportunities of enterprises which can actually work in the spheres of health, education, water, sanitation, governance, all those which are not typically classical only economic value generating opportunities, but these are opportunities in which human potential can be furthered. These are opportunities in which planet can be protected better. These are opportunities in which we will consume less because of the way the business is set up, right? So that is the logic of social economy. And social economy today, for students, I would like to particularly say this. It's much larger than the defense budget of this country, which is around 50,000 crore. Almost 180,000 crore plus is invested by Government of India on education and health and allied services. So that's the size of the market, if you would like to put it. So this is typically called the social economy. Another way to look at social economy is social enterprises and their turnover. In fact, globally, 7% of the GDP, according to the World Economic Forum, is generated out of social enterprises, which means those which have the dual objective of creating social value and economic value, not at the cost of each other, but furthering both, right? So there are several such examples you will find as you look out in the world, which are emerging. So do not look for classical jobs alone, which typically would place you like what an engineer would do or an expert would do. Today, your opportunities to create social value is enormous. And I say this with a lot of confidence, today's generation, unlike my generation, which was far more selfish, far more had to be protective of our economic growth of our families, because our parents had to do a lot of sacrifice to educate us. And we were able to just maintain and to some extent bring up the next generation, which is all of you. And in the next generation, I find there is a lot more giving, lot more social awareness, and lot more clarity that the way we live today is absolutely unsustainable, and therefore we need to change it, and we need to change it fundamentally. And part of the problem is the way we produce and the way we consume, right? There's problems in both. Let me give you one example. If you are buying wheat at, let's say, a price of 15 rupees a kilo, right? I'm just giving you a theoretical figure. Do we really know the true price of that 15 rupees kilo? Because the farmer who is applying chemical fertilizer, who is trying to eke out the maximum productivity out of the soil for the wheat, prices it at 15 rupees. Out of the 15 rupees, hardly 3 or 4 rupees goes to him or her as a farmer. That's one part of the problem. The second part of the problem is that if that wheat was properly grown without hurrying it, without inorganically adding fertilizer to it, with understanding pests are part of the ecosystem and therefore we will lose some part of the produce, then the real price of wheat may be around 30 rupees. Are we willing to pay that? In my view, increasingly people are willing to pay that. They know that this kind of a consumption of wheat or any such produce causes cancer, causes many other ailments which we are slowly discovering are related to agriculture and food systems. So there is a growing number of enterprises which are looking at how do we encourage farmers to grow and supply products which can be priced at the true price, right? These are the other types of enterprises which are coming up. In education, there is a whole range of enterprises, and you have heard about Baiju or other apps. While they may look like coaching, they play a very important role in terms of bringing students who are struggling up to a point. Some of us may not agree with that approach. Sadguru's approach of Gurukul approach is definitely the most ideal way to do it. But there are enterprises which are supportive of these two, right? The transport system to your own university is a classic case. Could be actually an enterprise if it hires differently abled people and give them jobs. Maybe it already does. If it does, double thumbs up to it, right? So friends, social enterprise is not a magical or a mystical subject. It's quite easy. Every business and every enterprise can be made into a social enterprise, and every social enterprise definitely can deliver both social as well as economic value. As you folks are looking forward to a career, whether you're going to work within a private company or within the government, please look for opportunities within the social enterprise world. You could, even government is moving a lot into social enterprises as a model. And don't forget, even the PSUs in some extent are social enterprises by strict definition, the public sector units. But beyond that, government is looking for change makers like all of you. And I come across district collectors and principal secretaries in health and education looking for smart youngsters to come and help them in managing. So this is a great way to start your career, even in the government. In private sector, there are huge amount of opportunities when it comes to ESG and other connected issues relating to environment and sustainability, which are new careers you could look at. There are foundations which are charitable foundations which give money and support other NGOs for causes. This could be another career opportunity for you. And lastly, there are NGOs which are doing ground level charitable work directly with the communities, right? Now these are all opportunities. In addition, I want to flag out 2 opportunities. You may have known about these 4. I want to flag out 2 opportunities for you to look at. There are startups which are very socially oriented, right? I know of a startup which is looking at diabetes testing, HbA1c test, which typically costs you 200 to 300 rupees. You're able to do it at 1 rupee, and you can even do it at home. You can buy the kit and do it at home, right? Now this can completely revolutionize how diabetes management is conducted. So please look for jobs in this, because when you work with startups like this, you would be creating social value as well as having a earning for yourself. Secondly, and last and most importantly, think about starting your own. And I'm sure you're all brimming with ideas on what can be done on waste management or on transport or on education or how do we save plastics. All of these are opportunities waiting to be tapped. In my mind, we would need millions of students and careerists like you who are starting off to come into the social economy and make a career and actually generate more jobs and deliver social value. We know today, because of COVID, 2030 SDGs are not going to be achieved in many areas. And if we have to accelerate and catch up for all that we lost because of COVID, it is going to take social enterprises to really step up and do things in a very different way and ensure the win-win-win arguments are met. And the architecture of those enterprises are built in a way, not only the economic value is added, but a social value is added. And definitely, if at minimum, if social value is not added, not generate negative public good, right? For like more pollution or more, greenhouse gases getting emitted. So it is important for you to look out for enterprises or start those enterprises if you think you are up to it. And there are lots of people who will handhold you. There are several accelerators and incubators available today. When I started my business 30 years ago, there were none. Today, there is a plethora of organizations willing to support social enterprises. So go on, change the world. There is a lot to do. Our country is beautiful. It cannot continue to have 1/3 of us starving every night. It cannot continue to have the kind of level of pollution we have. It cannot continue to have health services at the level that we have. It cannot continue with the kind of illiteracy and lack of awareness that we have. If this has to change, a lot is in your hands. Thank you for giving me this opportunity once more, to the grace of Sadguru and all the people who organize this. Thank you very much.
Thanking all our speakers, we now request Dr. Sharma ji to kindly wrap up the session with a few takeaways.
Thank you. We have exceeded time, so I'll be very brief. I think the message from all the 3 presentations is the same. The nation awaits you, the world awaits you. What are you waiting for? Shiv Kumar ji had a great message. Social enterprise is important. If you take the first step, perhaps you can conquer the world. The whole world, the society is waiting for you. And I believe it was a continuation of what Adhi Narayan ji said. We all can do many things just because we do not have the idea or someone has not put that idea in our minds. The curriculum has not done it. We are following a path, a passion, which is not really our passion. We have not realized. So we are doing that. We need to go inside. We need to search for one's own real passion. To watch a movie, to go to Switzerland cannot be the passion, but then that has been inculcated in us. And we follow that. So what's that true passion that comes out if you look, I mean, here again, Shiv Kumarji and Adhi Narayanji, you have to search for yourself, and this is the right place. And I think both the speakers mentioned that besides your academic, you need to look at the society. What was mentioned also in the first speech or intervention, that it's not only for ourselves that we should be educated, we are privileged to get the sort of education that we are getting. Let's not be so selfish only to avail it for ourselves. Let's give it back to the society. We are born with a purpose. We need to realize that you have that opportunity. This institution is great, and it has given you that opportunity. That comes out clearly through all the three presentations, that just because these ideas have not been put in our minds, we have not followed that. We need to do that. I believe the message is you are fortunate to be part of this institution. Don't only follow and pursue the curriculum that is being taught. Look at the society. Look at the conflicts within you and do something great. Thank you very much. I think that's the message.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for that quick recap. Thanking Mr. Adhi Narayan and Mr. Shiv Kumar for being here and sharing your thoughts with all of us. We now request Dr. Srikantamurthy, the Vice Chancellor of the Sri Sathya Sai University for Human Excellence, to extend a token of our collective gratitude to Dr. Sharma ji. We request Dr. Venugopal, the Registrar Evaluation, to kindly facilitate Sri Adhi Narayan ji. Thank you all once again for your patience and kind listening. We will close this session and reconvene at 2:45 for the session 2 of today's proceedings. We request all the students and staff to be seated here by 2:45. Saira.